My name is John Boswell, and I am the lead for our MPA program at the University of Southampton. And so this is going to be a brief overview for what learning is like on the Masters of Public Administration, what we get our students to do in class and in assessments. So a brief overview of the MPA. The Masters of Public Administration, the aim is to provide you with knowledge and skills to analyse and manage processes of governance, policymaking and administration, many levels of government, from local to national to global. One of the exciting things about it is that it brings together people from the UK and Europe, but also from all over the world. And the discussion amongst the students, amongst the cohort, is often really vibrant and lively and involving so many different perspectives and experiences. So you'll choose from among a variety of modules that allow you to explore the many dimensions of modern policymaking administration, public policy design and delivery, strategies that public and non-profit organizations use to respond to major policy problems and dilemmas, and some of the effects of the policy choices that we make. Just a word overall. So the emphasis in what we do and everything we do is on practice, not on theory. There is some theory because, of course, it's an academic course, but our real emphasis, and this comes from our real strength in the department, where we're probably, in terms of the practice of public administration, probably the leading department in the UK and one of the leading departments in the world in terms of our research and interest in the practice of public policy, in engaging with policymakers, with leaders in public administration. That's both in the UK and around the world. So we're really interested in practice, and we want our students to be practicing as well. And so there's a massive emphasis on learning by doing. What that means in practice is that in most modules, particularly modules that are offered through politics and international relations and social policy as well, there's a real focus on workshops and working in small groups. So not many lectures where there's passive learning, a lot more focus on active learning and in groups. There will be reading to do, academic reading to do, background reading to do at home. It's the same with any postgraduate module, postgraduate program that you might do. But very little old-fashioned kind of, let's discuss the readings, the kind of old seminar model that you see in a lot of universities, postgraduate programs in politics still. Very little of that, much more focus on activities. So we have activities in class. These are based on real-world problems, on scenarios, on real-world experiences, previous experiences pertaining to public policy, public management, administration, and leadership. So what I'm going to do is run through 3 different examples of what this looks like, so that you have a sense of what it is that we do. So the examples come from different modules of different parts of what we're doing around the university. One example, this comes from a module that I teach. So I take the compulsory module that you would do in first semester called Comparative Public Administration. And in that module, we spend a fair bit of time looking at trends across the world in public administration. And one of the main ones relates to public sector reform. So these are ideas about how we organize the public sector, how we try and get public servants to meet targets, to kind of promotion, retention, hiring type, in relation to the way in which the public sector and the public service is organized. And these are a lot of readings in this area, right? Go through this, and they can be, the readings themselves can be quite dry and, you know, theoretical and hard to understand. So instead of that, what we tend to focus on is a set of activities that will make these issues come to life. So one activity that I use every year involves getting students to work in groups in class. So you will come into the class having done some reading and getting a basic understanding of particularly what the theory in this case is called new public management, and it's about trying to make the public service, ideas to try and make the public service more like private enterprise that have come through in public administration reform in the last 20 or 30 years. And so that's the basic grounding that everyone comes into the class with. But in order to make this come to life and to help people to see the real life issues that are involved with this sort of reform, what I do is present students with a scenario. So it's too lengthy to explain and provide here, but there's basically a fictional country. And that fictional countries seem to have a bloated, hierarchical, inefficient civil service. So kind of all the traditional problems that are associated with bureaucracy. And the students are put into groups of about 3 or 4. And I try and make sure that there's a nice diversity within the groups. So people have different experiences from different places. And within your groups, you are tasked with, you're a public sector consultant. And you are tasked with advising this government on how to reform their public sector bargain in order to increase efficiency and responsiveness. And so students go away and they come up with a list of recommendations, you know, that appointments should be based on merit rather than experience, that civil servants should have to meet certain targets, that you know, all sorts of reforms to the way in which the civil service would work to encourage civil servants to be more efficient and to be more responsive. And people think through what these might look like, and many people on the module will have experience working in the public sector, and they'll be able to draw on examples from their own experience. And so one of the really interesting things, the things I'm trying to get out of this activity that come out every year when we do it, is that the scenario is encouraging students to understand what public sector reform involves, and in particular to understand some of the challenges, the barriers to change, sometimes unintended or problematic consequences of reform, which is very common with new public management. And so the activity brings to life many of the kind of things that we see when you look at the academic literature, when you look at the theory, but it does so in a way that makes it much more tangible for students, so they really understand and are able to tackle some of their assessments later with a greater understanding of what's going on. Okay, so here is an activity that a colleague of mine delivers each year on the Dilemmas of Leadership module. So this is an optional module that many of the students on the MPA choose to take. And this activity is based on the idea of trying to understand what it's like from the perspective of people leading. And so what he does is he gets students to write down on a piece of paper a series of complex policy issues. So at the moment, there'd probably be one topic on everyone's lips, which would be the pandemic. But historically, it's been a number of different things people might write down. Right? There's an issue with climate change. There's issues with ongoing poverty and deprivation. Right? Whatever the case may be, a complex problem that's difficult to deal with. And what he gets them to put it in a hat, and then they draw it out of a hat. And in that session, they then go away and they're given 48 hours to draft a 2-page briefing for the minister. So a 2-page, this is the situation with this issue. What should you do? Like a real briefing that you might have to give a minister in the UK. So a minister being a key decision maker in the UK government. And so students do that, they go away, write this up, and then come back 48 hours later, and they swap their briefings in class. So they take turns. So each person will be the minister responding to the briefing and making a snap decision. And in fact, this activity has potential to become even more exciting and interesting because we have on staff at the University of Southampton now actually a former minister in British government, John Denham. So I'm sure he will be involved in this process from now on to give some real life experience as to what it's like being a minister making decisions. And so this activity encourages students to empathise with some of the time pressures that political leaders work under, that their advisors work under, and to appreciate, you know, some of the things that need to happen in terms of government communication within government. Okay, the third example, this is an activity that's actually outside the bounds of our courses. It's something that we offer as a kind of added extra. We're planning to offer as an added extra in the coming year, and really relevant for MPA students. So this is in conjunction with, it's called Public Policy at Southampton, which is the university's knowledge broker with government. So they work a lot with researchers at the university to try and get science and evidence that the university, the academics across the University of Southampton are trying to give to government advice. And so we're working with them and on this idea of what's called what we're calling a policy Dragon's Den. Now the name comes from Dragon's Den, is a very popular television show, a historically popular television show in the UK on entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurs go in from business and have an idea that they try and sell or pitch to a series of investors who are the dragons, and they interrogate the entrepreneur and then decide whether to invest or not. So our idea is to take this and turn it into a kind of policy Dragon's Den. So we will have a series of dragons, including people from public policy at Southampton, some of our senior professors, maybe some former politicians, to sit and listen and hear about some ideas that students have for policy reform or policy change, and to then invest their energy in what they consider to be the best policies. And what we will do is work with winners to produce a real policy brief for the government or for stakeholders in the UK. So that can be a nice outcome or output that you can maybe work towards. And so the idea is to give students, particularly at postgraduate level, the opportunity to have real world experience of policy advocacy in the British context. Okay. So I just want to clarify, in case it was not clear, none of what I've talked about so far is assessed work. None of those activities, the group work, the kind of verbal presentations, and so on, none of them are formally assessed. What they are is a chance to build your skills and your knowledge in a kind of interactive, practice-oriented environment so that you can tackle a wide range of assessments. And those assessments include traditional essays, that you do at any university, but also case studies, research reports, policy briefs, advocacy papers, and blogs. And also exams and tests will be in some of the modules as well. So the activities I've been talking about, they're not assessed. What they do is they build your skills, your confidence, your experience, so that you're in a much better place to actually tackle those assessments. And that you can do so in a way that's most students really find fun, engaging, enjoyable, and stimulating.